Hi everybody, my name is Hemant and I'm an alcoholic and I haven't had the first drink with the grace of God and the help I've received from Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to recap whatever we have been talking about, especially about the list of people, because this is one of the most difficult things which I came across when I reached Alcoholics Anonymous. And before I start this, my own preparation, thank you, Philip, for conducting this Back to Basics workshop. You've been brilliant so far, and I know you'll continue to be so. And so we welcome you all to this Back to Basics study led by Philip. And we are very grateful to him as a group for him to do that. But I was trying to recap here what happens about the step 4. So, how do you get this name of this list of names? The list of names where the book talks about Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown and things like that. But the basic fact is, where does the names come from? They come from your memory. It's your list. It's not your sponsor's list. It's not the list of Bill W. It's your list. It comes from your memory. And who are those people they are talking about? There are three chapters in the big book. And let's talk about the people we heard. Page 70. There's a very brief one-line mention of the fact about talking about people we have heard. Even in that chart, there is no clear-cut positioner. You can't really make. There's no clear-cut position which says people you have heard. You're talking about resentments. You're talking about fears. You're talking about your sexual conduct or misconduct, or call it what you like. But there is, but yet we have the eighth and the ninth step talking about making amends for to the people you have hurt. So where does that list of names come from? And so that is the chapter to wives, the family afterwards, and to employees, because these are the people we have hurt the maximum, our spouses here. And the whole paragraph, initially they tell us how the hideousness of the non-alcoholic married to an alcoholic, what an alcoholic does, how much trouble an alcoholic creates for a non-alcoholic. Children grow up rebellious, and then they talk about the family. Children grow up rebellious. The parents-in-law don't really know what to do. Mother and father are at their wits' ends. They can't understand what's happened to their golden son or golden daughter, and those are the people who are more affected. They talk about on page 82. Talk about the tornado running through the life of people who care for you, who are affection, who owe your affection to you. Those are the people we have to talk about. Those are the guys we have to make maximum amends to. The rest of the world, yes, but first, before that, and then of course there are those people we work with. The employers, if we are employed by somebody, our employers. If we are employed in somebody, our employees. The way we behave with them, the people who have lent us money, our partners. Those people who are tied to us by more than just knowing us. They're tied to us in financial ways. They're tied to us because they're married to us. They're tied to us by because they're siblings. They're tied to us because they're basically family or friends who care for us. And those are the lives we have destroyed. How often do I hear this here that my children don't like me, they hate me? And I know of a particular girl who wouldn't let her, after in sobriety, who wouldn't let her father touch her mother, touch the mother, because she always kept on saying, "No, this is not. We don't like you. We don't want you." And this is so. It happens so often that children don't want you to be with them. The children don't like you. So where is this list of people? Are those so-called forgotten chapters of Alcoholics Anonymous, to wives, the family afterwards, and to employers? Basically what they are telling us is these are it's a double-edged sword. 1937, the book cost started getting written. There were 40 people who had been sober for a year or more. And that's what prompted the book to be written. But let's go a little ahead. Yeah, 1939. Well, a lot of people were there, and they kept on slipping. And so the family pressures were there. The wives wouldn't understand. So it's those chapters are written for two purposes. One, to show the alcoholic a mirror. It's actually to show him exactly, this is you, man. This is how you have turned your family. This is what you have done to your family. This is what you have done to the people you work with. This is how you have spoiled your environment. And simultaneously, it's also a plea to the family, to the spouses, to the employers to be a little more realistic about their relationships. Not to tell them. And this is basically an explanation because it's not a habit. That alcoholism is a disease, and the guy is not responsible for his disease. So simultaneously, those chapters have been written for both here. And let's really understand that the alcoholic is responsible for the damage he has done to his family. He may not be responsible for his disease, but he is really responsible. I mean, imagine you're a trusting wife, and this guy gets drunk every night and does whatever he does. What is her life? And yet, here we ask him, and in these chapters, the forgotten chapters, we are asked that, all right, be compassionate towards him. Is it even possible? I don't really think so. So while Philip goes ahead and talks about the fourth step and the fifth step, I want to re-emphasize the fact is that the hurt which we have done to people is as much a part of the fourth step and the fifth step, because in the fifth step, when we talk to somebody else, we talk to another human being, we tell them basically what how we have what we have done, the damage we have done to others, the damage we have done to ourselves, the damage we have done to relationships, the damage we have done with our relationship with God, with everybody. So we talk to somebody else, we confess our wrongs. And that's why this is so important that I wanted to re-emphasize it before Philip started off his study, because Philip is doing such a brilliant job. But I really want to emphasize this fact that the list of people comes from you, and those are the list of, and those 20 or 25, 30, 40 people who are really close to you are the greatest sufferers because of your alcoholism. So, and with that, I want to hand it over to Philip. And thank you, Philip, for conducting the study for us. God bless you. Philip, you're muted. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are. Be known that you're in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're here to get well. And anyone who has a drinking problem, you're in the right place. When I look back and see why I came into these classrooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, it was a bare beginning. I was a skeptic, a scared human being who didn't have any life coping skills, totally disinterested in anything else, a recluse, a very lonely person, a lost soul. And this is where I heard the sentence which said, hope for the hopeless. And that way I was the hopeless one. And today I testify that before you, that this program works if you work it. It is for those handicapped like me that who didn't have coping skills, didn't know how to live, didn't know how to think, didn't know how to resonate. There is a way out. So stick around, I welcome all the newcomers to this meeting, all the guests that are here. Thank you for turning up and telling me that this program works. And it's a privilege working, with you. Thank you, Hemant, for starting off the meeting and giving a brief on what you thought the fifth step was all about. And for a moment I thought, where was I going to go with Hemant talking the way he does, So it takes what it takes, to get to where you are and do what you have to do. So those newcomers you're here, who are trying to work the step, anyone want to identify themselves? Would you raise your hands, please, so that we could felicitate you? We could, applaud you for your success. Joe Kenneth. Aditya, Randall, Shitansu. Anyone else, please? Please put your hands up if you're in the first year of sobriety, the first year of your working this program, Tushar, Shahanu, Bella. I heard Bella yesterday. She's come a long way. Sonu, Dhyan, Subhash. Anyone else who would like to Shabir, Sri Lanka. Right. So let's not waste much time. For those who have not put their hands up here, we applaud you too, because it's a great effort. Having a day sobriety in the first year is of paramount importance. Though we are doing step 4, 5, 6 now at this moment, those who are starting to work this program, let me assure you, you're on the right track. You're in the right place, and you're amongst people who are your kind. We call them brothers from another mother, or sisters from another mother. That's how it is. We resonate. We think the same way. We've been through the same experiences, most of us. So let's put our heads together. Thank our higher power for having shown us a way. And I pray that I be able to pass on this message of hope to you as I work through steps 4, 5, and 6. And tomorrow I want to be doing 7. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, they like Hemant said, these are the forgotten steps, because it does not show much of an action, much of a relevance. Yet when you read the 12 and 12 steps and 12 traditions, it says, it separates the men from the boys. That's a big statement. When you separate the men from the boys, means, was I a boy until now, until I came halfway down the program, And then again, when you go to step 8, it says, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. So here I am halfway through. So am I going to be amazed? How do I separate the men from the boys? So if you would know, I would say, I would share that, we are an immature lot. We are hypersensitive, My outsides don't match my insides, because inside I'm a, immature human being. So, here I'm trying to be responsible. So step 6 onwards, I start working the program. So let me start from the beginning for the benefit of the newcomers who are here today. We're doing this workshop in favor of people who find it difficult to find sponsors and others to work with to do the steps. Why do I need these steps? Remember, if you read the big book, if you read the doctor's opinion, it talks about we being a maladjusted to life, maladjusted personalities, bodily and mentally different from other people. I think differently. I'm a mental destitute. See, all these things are there. So, I was different. My thought process was different. My thinking pattern was different. My affinity to alcohol was different from normal people. My affinity to life was different from normal people. So there was this difference in me, which I did not know much about. I grew up. And as a part of growing up, I came into contact with alcohol, and I was ready. I was not a starter there. I was already a graduate when I started, because I drank for the effect. I just got it in, and I was there. I landed. I knew. And why did I drink that way, or why did I drink alcoholically? It's because I wanted to shut reality off. I wanted to black out. I wanted to push away those things that were holding me back. My complexes that held me back, that I didn't match up. I didn't feel as good as others. I was different. These sort of thoughts went away the moment I drank alcohol. So it goes to show that alcoholism is but a sickness. It's a threefold illness, which incorporates the mind that obsesses, the body, which has a physical allergy. The moment I put a drink into my system, I cannot stop, which is not normal with other people. And third is I suffer from a spiritual bankruptcy, which most of us have experienced, the loneliness that plagues an alcoholic. And we drink to fill that hole in the soul, that is created by this loneliness. So these are the reasons why I need, stopping drinking was never my problem. Staying stopped was my problem. I couldn't stay stopped because I didn't have a program for life. And now this is a spiritual program, and a spiritual way of life is the only solution to this thinking, drinking problem of mine. So I am here to an Alcoholics Anonymous to relearn how to live. If I don't relearn how to live, and if I just stop drinking, what happens to me? I'd suffer from something called, dry drunkenness or untreated alcoholism. My behavior does not change. The only difference is I've not picked up a drink. And if I look back, I picked up a drink because I couldn't tolerate my own behavior. I couldn't tolerate my own thinking. I was not, I was not in good company with myself in my own head. So when I drank, I made these things happen in my head. Alcohol gave me wings, but took the sky away from me. And who would want to believe that? A life full of dreams, expectations were all shattered by alcohol. And so when my, like Gurmeet says, when my scorecards read 0, I had to find something, by which I could sustain myself. And I tried religion, I tried medicine, I tried psychiatry. Others tried it for me. Nothing worked. But I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. It took me 6 months, but in 6 months I sobered up. Sobering up, keeping away from a drink is one thing, and staying sober is another thing. When I talk about sobriety, it's sobriety in all areas of my life. So if I didn't know what sobriety was all about, we have 12 steps and 12 traditions, and 12 concepts. Now, the 12 steps teach me a way of life. So Alcoholics Anonymous by itself is a way of life. And why do I need this way of life? Because the way of life that I lived didn't work for me. I was, I was following it to the gates of insanity and death, and I didn't know whether I would live or die. So when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was totally washed out. I had nowhere to go. It was a gift of desperation that brought me into Alcoholics Anonymous, where, I was told, that I'm powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable, the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is the only step that can be taken in totality, the personal powerlessness over alcohol and the unmanageability of my life that had brought me to the brink of insanity and death. So I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. I stopped drinking, and now, but I went back to drinking because I hadn't addressed the other issue in my life, that was the unmanageability. So for the first time, Alcoholics Anonymous said, the rest of the 11 steps and the 12 steps are about your unmanageability and how you're going to manage life and live life to the fullest as you can. And they also said a few things like, you need to live life to its fullest. You need to be happy, joyous, and free. We are not a glum lot, we can do these things. But I could never comprehend these things because I didn't think of anything but death. I didn't think of anything but the nightmares that I have to live through every day. I woke up the next day with this, yearning to live life like a normal human being. And by afternoon, evening, that was gone because I was off to the races again over a drink. So, my life revolved around this chemical alcohol, which made me a self-centered person, selfishness, self-centeredness that we think is the root of our problems. It's what is said in page 62 of the big book. So I was playing God and I had to stop playing God. So in the first step, I stopped drinking and I started addressing my problem. In the second step, they say, came to believe a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And this power greater than myself, happened to be the classrooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I couldn't find a tangible part I could rely on because the God of my understanding had failed me. So I thought, I had to find something, or was it a denial or an evasive excuse for me to go back to it? I wouldn't know, but I stuck around. So it was indeed a power greater than myself that restored me to sanity. So there I came to believe that it was through a divine intervention that I came into the classrooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there, once I was in the classrooms, there was a profound personality change that came about me from a totally negative person, from a helpless, hopeless, useless human being. I got that, wish or the will to stay sober. If they can stay sober, I can stay sober. So they said, lack of power was your dilemma. You used alcohol as a power. Now you can't use alcohol as a power because alcohol is going to kill you if you have it anymore. So looking on hindsight, on all that I had been through, the price that I had paid for my admission in Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought I might as well give the Alcoholics Anonymous a try for my better judgment. And they said lack of power was my dilemma. So I had to find that power. And they said, you can use Alcoholics Anonymous as a power greater than yourself to such time that you are able to acknowledge that power. You will have to at one point of time. So I came to believe that a power greater and sanity is defined as soundness of mind. So was I not of sound mind and body? The book says so, that I was not of sound mind and body. But this sound mind and body comes back once I stop drinking. Now, after a period of time, my body recovered, but my mind had to be quieted. My problem is in my head. My problem centers in my head. It's not in the bottle. It's not in my body. It's in my head. It's only after I take a drink, my body starts reacting to it, and I crave, that the incessant craving starts. The phenomenon of craving, as they call it, starts. But here I stopped drinking and I found this source, that power greater than myself, to be Alcoholics Anonymous, that had restored me to sanity over a drink. Sanity is explained as soundness of mind. So I was not of sound mind and body, but now I am getting to be of sound mind and body also. So there were a lot of falsifications in my mind that had to go, a lot of superstitions, so I needed this power to help me out. So the third step says, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood it. Now, this decision was the hard part. Making decisions, everyone was making decisions for me. The world was making decisions for me. I didn't know which. It was last time I made a decision and it came off well. Whether it be a family decision, a job decision, a decision for myself, buying some clothes, anything. Everything was under the influence of alcohol, or induced or propelled by the thought of an alcohol. So, when, you can't entertain two devils at the same time in your head, or you can't entertain God and devil in that at the same time. So that was the way. My mind was split into two and I didn't know what to do about myself. So the world made decisions for me. So here I am. I decided I'm making a decision for the first time in my life. So when I stop drinking, what happens? A big miracle happens. The gift of choice is given back to me. I can choose whether I want to drink or not. So if I have to choose that I don't want to drink, and the thought of a drink does not propel me away from my sobriety, I have to choose this power, which is going to restore me to sanity over a drink and over my life, my future life. So I made a decision to turn my will. My will is what I aspire to be, what I aspire the world to be, what I aspire other people to be is my will. My life is the life that I have left behind, the one that I'm guilty, remorseful, ashamed about, thinking, putting my head into the past and being grievous about everything. That is my life. So here I'm giving my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. So my level of understanding may differ from someone else's level of understanding, but all the book says is, you just have to, hand it over. So it's just making a decision. It's like I decide to buy a house. It does not mean I bought a house. I decide to get married. It does not mean I got married. It's just a decision. It could change for the better or for the worse, whichever way you want it. So I made a decision. Handed it over. And then I immediately embarked on a house cleaning job. They say, I started looking into myself. The person I was running away from, the person I didn't like, the person I didn't trust, that was me, Philip. So I know they said, you need to look at myself and see, where I've gone wrong and what I have done to myself. So I made a fearless moral inventory of myself. I was a fearful fellow, full of fears, full of superstition, full of phobias. That's what I was, fear. And here I'm supposed to make a fearless moral inventory. And how could I do a moral inventory? My mind, with the little knowledge I had about things, I would just magnify it and blow it out of proportions and think, this is not going to be done. I'm not going to look into myself. I like being me. I'm okay where I am. But trouble that I have within me, they say trouble when trouble troubles trouble. I was being troubled by my thoughts every day, and I was troubled. I couldn't sleep. I didn't have a drink now, which would put me to the anesthesia that I used to put me to sleep was not there. So I had, either I was torn between an alcoholic. To choose between an alcoholic death or a spiritual way of life are not always easy alternatives. So I had to choose whether I wanted to have this God way or my way, whichever way. And I knew my way was not working and it was getting me closer to a drink. So I said, okay, let me find out what I am and who I am and what I am doing about myself. By now, I had started enjoying the basic fruits of sobriety. People started trusting me. I started walking out into life. I started doing things for myself. I started standing up for myself to a certain extent. Those skeptical vary about a lot of things, because I was just, being inducted into a new way of life, into a new way of thinking. And it's never easy. It's never easy. It's like a small child growing, of course, being sent to kindergarten, and he's learning coping skills there, how to adjust himself with other kids, how to live, watching them inculcating habits of his own. That's what was happening to me. I was so self-embroiled in myself. I was so self-engrossed in myself. I didn't see what was happening around me. 22 years of my life just went in a blur. And when I stopped drinking, things that was happened around me. People had moved on, and I was still stuck where 22 years back, like a prehistoric dinosaur. I said dinosaur because, I had grown up and I was occupying a lot of space, and I didn't warrant it because I didn't know what I was doing and where I was, So it's a very hopeless situation to be in. For those of you being there will understand that. So for the benefit of the newcomer, when you talk about handing over your will and your life over to the care of God, you're taking a 180 degrees turn. You're making a decision. Be it right or wrong, you're going to make a decision. So the gift of choice, you're exercising it for the first time, on a free will. We are all born with free will, but we are imprisoned by our habits and our thoughts. So we lost our free will. We pawned it off to alcohol and the associates of alcohol. So here I am, at step 3, handing over, and then step 4, looking into myself for the first time in my life. I looked at myself and I was told to repeat this. Philip, you should feel you are worth staying sober for. And yes, I felt I was worth staying sober for. Nobody wants to give up on life that God has given. For the first time, I started understanding that, this God was an understanding and loving God. It was me who had drifted away from God's way and God's will, that, I led a life of a recluse, I led a life of what they call sin or whatever it is, because I was out of the norms of the human way of living. So was I inhuman? Yes, I was inhuman. Now, what I'm going to find out is, why was I inhuman, or why did I do the things I did? So I shouldn't feel regret, remorse, and guilt, which I feel every day. So here I am, I start looking at myself. There are 4 aspects of which I need to look into when I'm looking at taking a fearless moral inventory. Yes. Now, if you feel that, you are hindered by doing your step 4, please look into the fear that is blocking you from doing your step 4. Work on your fears, finish your fear inventory, and then come on to it. I'm talking like this, but, it took me also time. But the thing is, the willingness to go to any length to stay sober, was there with me, the gift of desperation, as they call it. So I started looking into myself, I started looking at my fears. Started looking at my resentments, people I resented, places I resented, authorities I resented, institutions I resented. Like Hemant said, put round names. You may have 40, 50 names, then you could earmark on each of those names and see what you resented, you feared, or you hated about, or you could look onto it on a later basis. So I make a beginning there. I started making a fearless moral inventory of myself. Here I see, who I hated, why I hated that person, what should I have done, and what part did I play in me disliking or resenting that person. Now, see, when you have so many of these characters living in your head, how could you have peace of mind? I could never have peace of mind, because all these guys were at war. They were gnawing me up. Each wanted his piece of flesh from my head. Going to bed was a tedious thing, and that's why I drank. I wanted to silence this mind. To silence my mind was my biggest objective. I wanted to shut those voices in my head. And Alcoholics Anonymous told me, you need to address those voices. You giving them rent-free space there, stop that. Now start, ask them and hold them accountable for, for whatever they have done or whatever you have done to them. And let's finish it, get it done and over with. So here I'm now, I'm looking at all the people, places, and other things that I resented, the sex harms that I have done to others or have done to myself, how little I knew about sex life, how little I knew about life in general. And then I look at the harms, how I have harmed people, how socially, how I was a social outcast and how it harmed the image and, other aspects of life of other people around me, like Hemant spoke about earlier. My family was the one who suffered the most. And so as I move on, when I come in all this, when I look at it, I see a lot of character traits that, that did not belong to me. I realized, I was a self-deluded person. Self-delusion, self-deception, self-delusion, these sort of things. I lied to myself. I believed in it. I tried to cheat others, and I believed in it. I believed in all the wrong aspects of life, and I justified it. And when I took a drink, the drink glorified it. It magnified it and say, yeah, what I'm doing is right, man. Otherwise, how do I survive? Yes, to a certain point, though, that's true too. But here, if I have to live a happy, joyous of life, free life, and if I have not to pick up a drink, then I need to learn the norms of life. I need to have a discipline in life. I need to know what self is all about. I need to start feeling comfortable in my own company, which was never there. I was running away from myself. So I made this searching, fearless moral inventory. And then I was told, admitted to God, to myself, and to another human being, the exact nature of my wrong. That is the step, admitted to God. Oh, here comes God now, So it's the second time this word God is appears here after the third step. By now, I understood this God, which I thought about. I had a wrong notion of God, a very bad misconception of what this God figure was. I thought God to be a sort of a pinch hitter or Santa Claus whom I gave my request to and he delivered. No, God, sorry. They say, he's my creator. He is my father. He's my employer. He is the one who has given me life. So that's God to me. And he has a certain way in which he expects me to behave, in a certain way that he expects me to live, like we expect of our children, those of you who have children. But once I drifted away from the likeness of God and the image that I was created in, I fell into those pits that, were not meant for me. And I blame God for it. So my will did not match God's will there. God's will for me was to be happy, joyous, and free with all the faculties that he had given me. Me, in my comparison of myself with others and, doing things to glorify myself and get a name, fame, all those things, I lost the, essence of what this goodness was in me, the godness, what we call it, was in me. I lost God in that, and I drifted down into the hades of hell, as we call it. I was really in hell. People talked about hell, and I would resonate and say, if you want to know what real hell is, live in the life of an alcoholic, live in the head of an alcoholic. And every day I wake up cursing myself, oh God, I need to go through another day. What do I do? So there are so many things that have surfaced in this fourth step, which we call character defects. Now, these character defects are the excess that happen when any of my character, basic character, is abused. My instinct of survival, my instinct of sex, my instinct of security, my instinct of society. Any of these instincts, once they are abused or they go beyond their normal use, it becomes a character defect. If it's sex, if I'm overindulged in sex, I become a sex addict, that's a character defect. If I overindulge in making money, padding expenses, cutting corners, that becomes a, character defect. Socially, if I started creating harm and disturbing people and doing things, to put myself on a pedestal and other things, yes, that becomes a character defect. So character defects are an offshoot, and I didn't realize I had these character defects, that brought me down to, where I am. So I realized I had to get rid of these character defects. So when I did my fourth step, the fifth step I took was with another human being, admitted to God, to myself, and to another human being. Now, from the trust of God, who I now realize there was a loving God. If he didn't love me, I would be dead. So it was not God that, made me go through all these things. He didn't want me to suffer. He didn't want me to go through the pits of hell. I chose that way, or it was my sickness, like they say in AA, I'm not responsible for my sickness, but I'm responsible for my recovery. So God's hand was there to lift me out of that and get me into recovery. So here in recovery, I find that these character defects had to go when I did the house cleaning. They were excess. If I had them in my house, I was going to bring the house down. I was going to bring myself down. When I say house, it's my head, inside my head. If I have those character defects, most of them became dominant. They quietened up, the lying, the cheating, all those things, But then there are certain of the character defects of mine, which I was still under self-deception, and some I didn't want to let go. I said, oh, this I won't let go right now. Maybe next time I do a fourth step, or it will go in a period of time. But, I can't have the luxury of holding on to these things, because sooner or later they will get me, And the sure punishment is, me going back to picking up a drink, which I didn't want to do. So here, I looked at my character defects, the character flaws. I sat down with another human being, I took a leap of faith. I started believing that this program will work, if I start working with somebody else. And so I sat down with myself, with another human being, and God being the centerpiece of it. I started working on myself. I sort of spoke to this person all about this, what I had written down on step 4, the names of people, what I had done to them, how I felt about myself. By now, I realized the most harm that had been done was to me. And if I had to undo that harm, I had to forgive myself. Now, I couldn't do that without God's help, So here I come to step 6. If you guys can open page 31 on your worksheets, it's there. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, entirely ready. That means I'm incomplete. I'm asking God to remove these defects of character. Now, I don't know who God is, but I feel God's presence. I can't tell you who God is, but I know that God is there. So, God has manifested himself into me in a way, that I started believing in myself, because again, I'll read, like last time I said, deep within every man, woman, and child is the basic idea of God. So God was in me. He was not outside there. He was in me. God is in you and me. We are created in the image of God, and our body is supposed to be the temple of God. We have contaminated. I contaminated my body. I contaminated my thought process. I contaminated the gifts the gifts of life that were given to me. I abused it, So inside, what was happening was there was this spirit that was crying out and saying, I want to see life. I want to be alive. But I was dousing it every day with another drink, another bad thought, another bad resentment. And, the spirit was dying within me. So I had to ask God to remove these defects of character that were coming in the way of my usefulness to God and to other human beings. See, if I don't come into usefulness with God, that means I'm not doing God's will. And if I'm not doing God's will, I can be of no use to anyone. You see, my job here, when I look at it today, is to coexist, to be a part of something, to be a part of the society that I live in, to be a part of the human race, which I never was. I was so self-obsessed, self-contained. I didn't have time or energy for anyone or anything. So I was learning, I was being reinstated into a new way of life, into a new way of thinking, and to a new way of believing. My belief system was being upgraded, But here what happens is, my faith wavers because change was happening, and change was so constant, and I resist change. And they say, change is the only thing. If you don't change, you will perish, which was very true. If I didn't change my thinking, I wouldn't be in Alcoholics Anonymous. But pain, again, is the touchstone to emotional sobriety. So when I ask God to, humbly remove all of these character defects, I know by now what my character defects are. I know what is wanting of me. I know where I'm feeling bad with myself, where I hurt myself, where I get into positions where I want to put my foot in my mouth time and again. I stop all those, presumptuous and unwanted habits that were in me. It slowly started ebbing away. But every time I was irritated, every time I was upset, I was told there is a character defect surfacing that I have not dealt with. Now, that is untreated alcoholism. Now, if I don't get rid of these character defects by understanding them, not that these character defects are going to go away, they will be there. But once I understand them, once I address them, it's like, the neighborhood, there is a dog that bites. You will always be careful when you walk by that neighborhood that the dog's door, that the gate is closed. If you venture out when the gate is open, and you're liable to get bitten. So you are careful. Similarly, my character defect, I'm made aware of my trigger zones, where if these character defects are not dealt with, maybe the repercussions will be you'll pick up a drink. So, the next step is humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings, which we will talk about tomorrow. It's almost the same, the shortcoming and the character defect. But these character defects, 6th and 7th step, are steps which we leave it God. It's like, me flying in an aircraft, with I don't know who's the pilot. I don't know what year of manufacturing that aircraft is. I don't even know the brand. I mean, even if I knew the brand, what do I know much more about it? I know it's a Boeing or an, Fokker Friendship, or it's an Avro, or it's an Airbus, some just outside names. I don't know the crew I'm flying with. I don't know how many hours. It's a leap of faith. So when I ask, we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character, I'm taking that leap of faith and saying, okay, God, I'm stepping into your aircraft, and I know you're going to take me from here to wherever the destination of that aircraft is. So it's handing over we let my life over to the care of God. And then, we're entirely ready to have God transport me and my character defects away from me, with that, leap. So it's a step, that I take in faith. By now, I have faith in myself. That's because I have forgiven myself to a certain extent. Self-forgiveness is happening to me. When I say I'm not responsible for my sickness and I'm responsible for my recovery cannot happen without God's help. My recovery cannot happen without the fellowship, without you people, all of you being here. How could recovery happen? So every step, every time we say go out to a meeting, we are enhancing recovery in some form, in some area of our life. It is being corrected. It is being straightened out. No one would come to this meeting and sit down here and nod their head if they know things were not working. You're not coming here because it's a rock show or, it's something else that's happening. No, this is all about self-improvement, self-appraisal, to find the lost soul that we have lost during our alcoholism. And that's all about character building. The essence of character building, as they call in the big book, is that I look to myself. I see God's will in my life, and through me into the lives of those I might help in His name. When this God concept enters my mind, I'm a totally different person. I'm able to forgive. I'm able to forget. I'm able to, encase things which I thought I could never handle. My irritability, restlessness, discontentment, all this is taken away. Not that they are entirely taken away, but, they are taken away most of the time. But the moment I start getting irritable, restless, and I go to my checklist first. Have you eaten? Did you make your amends last night? Is your stomach okay? I make my checklist. For the moment I make my checklist, I know where I've gone wrong, So this program is such a wonderful program. It's making me the person God wants me to be. This may sound a little outlandish. You may ask, then if God wanted, why did He make you the drunk? But, if you didn't become the drunk and you didn't go through the pain, the trauma, the turmoils that you went through, how could you be of use to God's people or where God wants to use you? It's like a doctor. If he's not gone through his internship, he's not a doctor. He has the general knowledge of a thing. Here, the practical sense, I went through it. So, but when I went through it, it was not funny. So I believe that everything, every aspect of life, or what I thought was heinous that I went through, was something God was trying to tell me or shape me for. Today I can speak to you, or I speak to you because that's my experience. That's the pain I went through. If you are sitting here listening to me, it resonates with you. Tomorrow you need to carry this message of hope to somebody else. I obviously cannot transmit something that I don't have. What I have is recovery. So unless I was entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character and use me, I wouldn't be able to sit and talk to you. So you see why I had to entirely let God remove these defects of character. No, I had to. It was not a choice. It was not a choice. Yes, it was a choice if I wanted to go on being miserable. But here I had to have God's will in it. I had to stop playing God. I had to be the person God created me to be. You may have a smile on your face when I say, when God created me, he created a masterpiece. God created Philip a masterpiece. But it was so sad, that Philip saw it differently. Philip wanted to be like Clint Eastwood. Philip wanted to have Elizabeth Taylor. Philip wanted to have... God's will was not that. Philip's will. When Philip started pursuing his will, he started getting into all the wrong company, wrong ways of life, and he was dealt a wrong deal. Now, who is to blame? Is God to blame or Philip to blame? Now, here, 6 and 7, I'm taking responsibility for myself. That is where you differentiate the men from the boys. I'm growing up. I'm taking responsibility for myself. For the first time in my life, I'm standing up and saying, yes, whatever I went through, I'm willing to, be responsible for that. I'm no more that coward that you thought you were. I used to always say in a rat race, whether you're the first rat or the last rat, you're still a bloody rat. I'm no more in the rat race. I'm a unique human being today, I realize, I'm a child of God, a creator that has created me, of all benevolence. He has given me the right to go and work into the lives of others and, redeem those who are still suffering from the throes of alcoholism. Every individual in this meeting room and alcoholics around there is being blessed with that gift, where you can reach out to another alcoholic and, save a life. Like they say, you may be the last copy of the big book someone may see. Now, how many people have that privilege? And that is why, you need to have God remove all these defects of character so you could be free of those blemishes, free of those thoughts that haunt you, free of those, irritants that come in the way of your usefulness to God and to others, So when I was asking God to entirely have my defects of character removed, I first of all understand what these defects of character are. These defects of character are, any of my basic instincts. When I start abusing them, they become a defect of character. So these defects of character, you should remember, were neither good nor bad for me, but it supported me during my alcoholism. If I didn't have it, I probably wouldn't survive. Like if I didn't have my alcohol, I may not have survived. Alcohol was the medication I needed, to quieten my mind. This character defects enabled me to, get going on with my alcoholism, to support my alcoholism. I needed those character defects, So, all these things go hand in hand. Here, what happens is here we are segregating it. We are finding out what we need to keep and what we need to let go. So the moment we let go of what is not required of us, we become free. It's like, we were carrying this burden. You must have seen pictures of people carrying burden, hate, resentment, self-will, jealousy, carrying the bone. In third step 3, you're handing it over to God. That means you become free. Your back becomes straight. You start looking people in the eye, right? In step 4, you're inspecting the baggage that you left, the hate, the resentment, the guilt, the shame, all that, you're opening it and you're looking at it. Then you sort it out with someone else because you don't know all the aspects. You're not an expert in this. You've only made a bare beginning. So you sit with somebody else and you find out what is right from wrong. And then in step 6, you're asking, your creator to, remove all these defects of character which you don't need. You see, I am being purified. If you have a water filter at home and you pour muddy water into it, the first level of filtration, it may look brown. The second level of filtration, it will look a little hazy. Third level of filtration, it looks white. But the fourth level of filtration, it will be crystal clear. That is how God is going to filter you and me, provided I am willing to let God into my life and work in my life. That's a prerequisite. Letting God be a part of my life. I stop playing God. I stop being that manipulative person I am. I'm entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. The sum of my fears was equal to the sum of my, drinking. Today, the sum of my happiness is the sum of how much I have let God handle my life. So where God's will and my will matches, there is happiness, there is sobriety, there is serenity, there's peace of mind. Weren't these the things that we sought for in a drink? Yes, that is what I sought for in a drink. If only, you could leave me in peace, I would be okay. If I had 2 drinks and I could keep it up on that, I would be okay. Without any of that, without a drink or thinking of a drink, I have that today. I have that motivation. I'm motivated to talk to you because I want you to have what I have. Where did this come from? I was a selfish, self-centered idiot. Today, no. I want to see, happiness around me. I like to laugh, joke, all those things. Where did it come? Thank you, God, for teaching me to laugh again. But let me not forget that I once cried. So I'll sum up my talk. I'll sum up my sharing here on step 6, where tomorrow I will embark on step 7. So I will do 6 and 7 tomorrow. It sounds a little difficult, but let me tell you, anything new is a little difficult. But as we get used to the new way of life, you will realize, the happiness that comes with it, the freedom that comes with it, the freedom from the bondage of alcohol, you stop drinking, the freedom from the bondage of fear, which you're working on. And then, when 6, 7 onwards, you come to the stage where freedom from the bondage of self, where, you are able to get out of yourself and live a life of fullness, of gratitude, of happiness. So I hope that, I was able to convey something to you and make you understand what was entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Lock, stock, and barrel. Try it. If it does not work, come back to me. That's all I can tell you, because I tried it and it works. Believe me, it works. If you see something that I have that you want, it's because God's being merciful and because I let God handle my life. Thank you. Good luck. God bless to one and all of you. Have a nice weekend and hope to catch up with you tomorrow evening. Over to you, Hemant. Thank you for all your support.
Brilliant, 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 Philip. Thank you so much. God bless you, Philip. Beautifully, the message was passed loud and clear. And thank you for emphasizing about self-abuse and self-examination. So feeling guilty all the time for whatever you have done, well, that's self-abuse. Understanding that you have a disease and re-examining your motives, that's self-examination. Thank you so much for that. Questions, guys? We have some time. Let's have some questions. Who would like to come ahead and ask something?